Go ahead, CJ, whenever you're ready.
Good morning and good afternoon, friends. We begin by welcoming everyone, and we ask the media to identify themselves by putting their name and their organizations in the chat. This press conference is being hosted by an ad hoc group of faith leaders called Interreligious Network for Worker Solidarity. In spite of no paid staff, our core extends across the United States and is growing rapidly. I am Reverend CJ Hawking. I'm Executive Director of Arise Chicago. I am also a United Methodist pastor, and I'll be serving as the MC today. We have 6 speakers today, followed by a question and answer. And so we invite the media to put your questions into the chat. And first, I want to set the context for today's press conference. There have been many pivotal moments in our country's history when we have banded together during or after severe hardship to advance the common good. As we emerge from the pandemic, we are ever mindful that essential workers, mostly low wage, mostly people of color, saved our lives and kept us comfortable by keeping the food chain going. But they did so at great risk to their own lives and to the lives of those in their multi-generational households. Faith leaders from across the country believe that we are at a pivotal moment and we must secure the rights of these and all workers. Most industrialized countries do not fight working people when they want to unionize. Yet in the US, workers face intimidation and harassment and even firings, as at least 10,000 workers annually are fired for attempting to organize a union. Most industrial countries do not have workers' wages stagnating at such high levels. In the last 50 years, while productivity has risen 74%, and CEOs' wages rose a whopping 940%, workers' wages rose a measly 12%. Of all the industrialized countries, the US is an outlier. Back in 1955, as our country was expanding and creating the middle class, 1/3 of workers were in unions and moving into a dignified quality of life. But then Reaganomics took over, and since then, the US has squeezed workers by extracting lower wages, lower benefits, and decimating the right to organize into unions. For decades, the US has seen a dramatic uptick in the number of families being thrown out of the middle class and into poverty wages. And we are here today representing 400 faith leaders from across the country who believe that the time has come for our nation to reset its moral compass by passing the PRO Act, the Protect the Right to Organize Act. Just like the New Deal was a major moral reset button for our nation, the PRO Act will successfully mend the gigantic tear of income inequality in the fabric of our society today. This weekend, as we celebrate the brazen independence of those who threw off the yoke of tyranny in 1776, we must now extend that same kind of self-determination to working families. We must create laws where workers can independently determine if they want to unionize without intimidation harassment, and the firings that they now face. So today we urge the US Senate to pass the PRO Act as the House did last year, to protect workers' rights who want to lift themselves out of poverty through unionization. We first turn to one of those workers, the workers that the PRO Act intends to protect, and that is Jennifer Bates, an Amazon worker from Bessemer, Alabama. Jennifer.
You need to unmute, Jennifer. We can't hear you.
Greetings. Thank you all for allowing me to be on the platform today. And yes, I am Jennifer Bates, and I'm a worker at Amazon facility in Bessemer. I've been working since I was 13 years old, and at the age of 13, that's when I realized the work, break, and pay. Throughout my life, for years, I've worked in ministry and I've worked a lot of jobs. My last job was 10 years before I went to Amazon. Upon entering into Amazon, I saw things that was not moral in the facility for any human being. And working in ministry with different people throughout the world, different, whether it be in the workforce or in the church, no one should be treated in an indignified way. That what pushed my desire to unionize in the facility of Amazon. One of the things is everyone that's free should have the freedom to unite for the betterment of themselves. Even looking back on the charts and finding out about the minimum wage after 1997, it only been raised twice in 22 years. I think even if we get raises on the job to help support our families, then I think the inflation shouldn't have the opportunity to up the prices either. So I think even when working class works, they also, there's an opportunity for those who are have the rental properties and housing to take the prices up. And I believe there should be a push to cap so that the working class people can keep up with the economy without having to work 2 and 3 jobs to take care of their families. That's why I support the PRO Act. It will give us the freedom to unionize and for the betterment of ourselves and our families. And I thank you for allowing me to be here on today.
Jennifer, thank you so much for being the light in the South, for being the light for the Amazon workers, and for having such incredible courage. We applaud you, and all the faith leaders on this call and who signed the statement support you and stand shoulder to shoulder with you in the struggle. One of those faith leaders is Roman Catholic Bishop John Stowe of Lexington, Kentucky. Bishop.
Good morning, everybody. And it's powerful to hear that testimony from an Amazon worker, because we've depended so much on Amazon during the pandemic in all kinds of circumstances to be coming to our doorstep and keep us safe, even as they're delivering, and the people packaging in the warehouses in some terrible conditions. We do indeed stand with you. It would be hard to overestimate the centrality and the importance of dignified labor to Catholic social teaching. And hand in hand with dignified labor comes the right to organize. Pope XIII said it back in 1897, that workers have a right to come together collectively to raise one voice and to be able to enter into negotiations for their better treatment, for their well-being, for their wages, and for their livelihood. In our Catholic teaching and in all our Judeo-Christian tradition, work is meant to dignify the human person. We're not meant to be slaves to labor. We are not meant to be the ones who are only keeping the machines going. We are to find our purpose in our work and somehow contribute to the betterment of society. That was so evident by the people that we called essential workers, so many of them people of color, so many of them migrants and refugees that were putting their own safety and health each day on the line so that we could continue with our lives as normal. It's time that we recognize these people and the work that they have done. It's time that we allow all workers to organize. It's time that we to end the notion of right to work states and emphasize protecting the right to organize. Thank you.
Bishop, thank you so very much. And thank you for your leadership in Lexington and throughout the country. As I mentioned, we are an interreligious organization. And so next I would like to call upon Sheikh Abdul Khan, a friend and colleague from the Islamic Circle of North America. And Sheikh Khan is in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hi, everyone. Peace be upon you. Deep in the Islamic faith, work is considered a virtuous deed and obligatory on all able-bodied person in society. A human being has many needs to fulfill: food, water, clothing, shelter, medicine, education. And he's required to fulfill these needs for himself and his family through lawful means and without intimidation. But while humanity is encouraged to work in order to promote growth in society, Islam has instituted laws to manage workers and to prevent them from being abused or exploited. Among those laws is the right to organize for better working condition, which leads to worker having the right to determine if they want to unionize to avoid any exploitation. Statistics show that half of non-union workers want to join a union, but a culture of intimidation and harassment prevents them, fearing that they will be fired. God Almighty does not want his creation to exploit or be exploited. He does not want his creation to abuse or get abused. As he says in the Quran, Allah does not like that the evil should be uttered in public except by him who has been wronged, and Allah is ever hearer, all knower. As such, I join hundreds of national faith leaders honoring self-determination of Independence Day by encouraging US Senate to pass the PRO Act, the Protecting the Right to Organize. After all, isn't this true freedom? Thank you and God blessing.
Thank you so very much, Sheikh Khan. Next, we have Reverend Francisco Garcia from Nashville, Tennessee, and he is also an Episcopal priest.
Thank you, Reverend CJ, and hello, friends. Good to be with you. I'm affiliated with the Wendland Cook Program in Religion and Justice at the Vanderbilt Divinity School, and we're deeply concerned about how economics play out in our society and how people are treated at a fundamentally at the level of human dignity. And so, as Bishop Stowe mentioned, this is Catholic social teaching and it's Christian social teaching, period. And so, as an Episcopal priest, I'm here to affirm that and to say that there's a disconnect between the values that we claim to hold as a nation, things like equality, justice, dignity of people, and how workers are treated in our economic system, and that needs to change. In my own Episcopal tradition, these values are expressed in different ways through our baptismal covenant, where we commit to proclaim by word and deed the good news of liberation in the way of Jesus, through love of neighbor, through striving for justice and peace among all people, and respecting the dignity of every human person. When we look at the economic landscape, though, and the impact that the pandemic has had on hundreds of thousands of families and working people, from injury to illness to unemployment and even death, we're not doing so well on these matters, are we? But labor unions, we know, have long been necessary vehicles for ensuring that the dignity of all who labor is not forgotten in our profit-seeking and productivity-driven system. We need a major overhaul in workers' rights in order for economic justice to be the norm. The PRO Act, by strengthening the right to organize, extends love of neighbor to the workplace and builds stronger communities rooted in dignity. In a place like Tennessee, where I am, where less than 5% of the workforce have access to unions, we desperately need the PRO Act. Let's call on the Senate to do its job. Thank you.
Francisco, thank you. Thank you so very much. And indeed, it's a message that all faith traditions embrace and uphold. Next, I'd like to call upon Bishop Dwayne Royster in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Reverend Hawking, for extending the invitation to be able to be here with you today. I'm Bishop Dwayne Royster, Executive Director of Power Interfaith, the state of Pennsylvania's largest faith-based organizing movement of multiple hundreds of congregations organizing for building a state of opportunity that works for all. I want to be very clear in my understanding of faith that all workers are the children of God. From my standpoint, I come out of the United Church of Christ. And that because they are the children of God, when we do not allow them and allow our siblings to be able to organize together, we are saying that what God has put in them is not good enough for the business leader, for economic leaders, for others to be able to hear. We want to be very clear that if we want a society that works well, that we need to make sure that all voices are heard at the table and that we recognize each person as fully human. Unfortunately, in our society, too often we get to a place where we think that those that have money and have wealth and own businesses are smarter than everybody else. The reality is that it takes all of us to make this economy work. It takes all of us to make America work. It takes all of us to make sure that our communities are thriving. Workers need to have the ability to organize because they are the children of God, and that together they can move in powerful ways to be able to create thriving, vibrant communities where people have health care, where people have housing, where people have food to eat, they have clothes to wear, and their children are able to get the education they need to further society down the road. Pass the PRO Act, Senate, and do the right thing. Recognize all of us as the children of God. God bless you.
Thank you, Bishop, for those powerful and prophetic words. Before I call upon our last speaker, Lily, I'm wondering if you could drop into the chat a copy of the statement that has been signed by over 390 religious leaders across the nation supporting the PRO Act. We want to make sure that the media has that. We're just on the cusp of 400. We're sure by the end of today or tomorrow we'll get up to 400. But we have faith leaders from all over the country supporting workers' rights, and we want the media and the world to know about that. Our last speaker is Professor Joe McCartan from Georgetown University.
Thank you, Reverend CJ, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am with the Kalmanovitz Initiative for Labor and the Working Poor at Georgetown University, and I'm a member of the convening group of the Interreligious Network for Worker Solidarity. One of the people who had planned to join us today was Rabbi Michael Feinberg, the Executive Director of the Greater New York Labor Religion Coalition. And Rabbi Feinberg has asked if I would read a statement on his behalf, which I will now do. I'll also put his contact information into the chat right now. He'd be happy to follow up with any of you if you have questions. And this is from Rabbi Michael Feinberg. The right to form a union is not only a basic democratic right, it is one enshrined in religious ethics and law, certainly one found in Jewish rabbinic tradition. It is the recognition that in unionizing, workers can gain collective power to level the playing field with employers and owners. This is critical in a time of such obscene wealth inequality. The PRO Act is essential in strengthening workers' basic right to organize. As such, it is a covenant, a sacred trust among workers to improve their lives and working conditions. It deserves the support of all people of faith. Rabbi Michael Feinberg, Executive Director, Greater New York Labor Religion Coalition.
Great, thank you, Professor, very, very much. So once again, we are here to say that workers deserve to be able to choose if they want a union. We are here to urge the Senate to pass the PRO Act. The people on this screen that you see represent more than 400 faith leaders across the nation who support the PRO Act. And that statement is in the chat, a link to that statement. I invite Professor McCartan to scan through the chat and see if any of the media have placed questions in the chat. And to our friends from the media, if you haven't and want to place a question in the chat, we'll pause for a half a minute here and let you do that.
Okay, Reverend CJ, I can share a question from Dennis Sadowski. What is the procedure for passing the bill in the Senate? And does the filibuster come into play, or can it pass with 50 votes?
And Professor McCartan, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, and then I invite others if they'd like to add their views as well. It's not fully determined whether or not this bill would have to go through a procedure which would allow it to be blocked by the filibuster. There are scenarios, I believe, that are possible with its inclusion in a reconciliation bill. However, our situation and our approach in this organization is we're not legislative tacticians. We're here to stand up to provide a moral witness for how or why this must be done, and leaving the how to others. I think I can speak for all of the folks you've heard from in terms of people coming from various religious traditions, and that all of these traditions really believe that faith can move mountains. Faith can make the seemingly impossible possible. And so we're not worried about or focused on the question of filibusters, and we'll leave that to others. This is a moment for us to come together and declare what is right. And so that's our most important objective today. And if no one wants to add to that, I can pass on a question from Jean Morano. Why is the US Chamber so dead set against the PRO Act? And how would it, if it does, affect the right to work states?
This is Bishop Stowe here. Our state not too long ago passed the Right to Work Act, and it prevents workers from being able to organize, prevents unions from having access to workers, and done very deceptively through the advertising campaign that it's creating more jobs and allowing more jobs to flourish, when actually it diminished the workers' rights to be able to organize and advocate for their own safety and well-being on the job. So hopefully the PRO Act, if passed, would mitigate the damage that was done in those right to work states and recognize the genuine right to organize that is part of basic workers' rights.
Mm-hmm.
If Clayton Sinyai from the Catholic Labor Network, specifically to how the bill would affect right to work states, it does have a mechanism that would require all people benefiting from a union contract to pay representation fees.
Great, thank you, Bishop, and thank you, Clayton. Any other comments? And Joe, what's next in the chat?
From Mark Grunberg, statements are fine, but for those who have parishioners who violate workers' rights, can you discipline them?
Well, I don't mind commenting. Most of the, well, at least
Michael, could you tell everybody who you are? Yes.
Michael Livingston. I'm the current interim senior minister at the Riverside Church and a former president of the National Council of Churches. most of the Protestant traditions, I can only speak for not even most of them, but some of them that I'm familiar with, do have books of discipline by which there are procedures for holding members accountable for a range of actions. Unfortunately, it is not terribly customary for congregations to actually use those systems and to exert some discipline over the behaviors of their parishioners. So yes, there are mechanisms in place, but they're rarely used, and especially in this kind of context over an issue like this.
Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Bishop Stowe again. It really undermines our teaching authority if we don't put our teaching into action. And sadly, we see that, and we would want our Catholic institutions, I'm sure all of our church institutions, to be leading the way in protecting workers' rights. There is not always a mechanism for direct discipline in our tradition against the member, but in Catholic social and in Catholic healthcare systems, the bishops do have a voice with the leadership of the hospital and should be using that voice to advocate for the workers.
Thank you, Bishop.
Reverend CJ, I would like to add that from the pulpit, especially on Friday sermon, there has been, especially when it comes to the fasting month, at any time at all, we have addressed this issue of easing workers' rights and giving them, easing workers' stress and giving them some ease, especially in the month of Ramadan. And at the same time, you let them know what the Quran and what the prophetic way of dealing with workers. So they get that message very clearly. And they know if they get income from people who are oppressed, then that income really is blood money they have in their hands in this world and on the day of judgment.
Thank you, Sheikh Khan. That's a profound message.
And I think I can just add that part of our intent as building this interreligious network for worker solidarity is to continue to spread this message of workers' rights and of the importance of unions in our economy, so that, for instance, the living wage movement did a lot of good in helping congregations understand that living wages needed to be paid across all levels within, say, a church system. I think that, extending sort of the idea of unions and unionization in religious communities is a growing edge, and I think that that's an area of work that we'd like to do.
I think I'd want to add that I think the emphasis that most of us here would represent is corporate action. It's acting together in an organization like this and in other ways that we come together to hold corporations responsible and accountable for their actions toward workers. It is less directed toward individuals who are members of our congregations. And I think we might all agree that that's perhaps the more powerful and organized way to go about this kind of work.
As we wrap up this question, I want to point out that 2/3 of Americans approve of unions. 2/3. That often doesn't get put into media outlets. And so we invite our media folks on this call to share that fact. 2/3 of Americans approve of unions. And Joe, is there another question?
Sure, from Kevin Clark. He's asking us to comment on the irony mentioned by Bishop Stowe that last year's essential workers are becoming this year's labor antagonists. He's also wondering, are there any specific unionizing campaigns that this group will be especially interested in now?
Yeah, let me just say that For the last couple of months, we've been certainly supporting workers at the Philadelphia airport, also supporting segments of the public school system that are not necessarily always unionized, and supporting essential workers in the healthcare system who are not organized as well. And have to really say that for institutions, corporations, especially those that have gotten bailouts over the last few years, for them now to deny the workers that have sustained their business models, that have continued to care for America, that have continued to provide for our needs right now, is absolute irony. There were signs all over the country. Thank you, essential workers. You're wonderful. We appreciate you. How about letting them organize? How about making sure they have decent wages? How about making sure they have benefits? How about making sure they have paid time off? How about we celebrate them and make sure that they have all the things that they need, because we don't know when we're going to find ourselves in this situation again. So I would say without a shadow of a doubt, there is a deep level of hypocrisy in that. And I should say that every political leader that has gotten an Amazon package and that did not support workers in Amazon do not deserve to get another delivery from.
Ooh, I think Bishop Royster's computer froze. Bishop Royster, we want to give you another minute, another few seconds.
He burned up the internet.
I think so.
No
His
conspiracy
message got through.
here.
For CJ, I would like to say something because it seems Amazon is the talk right now. Somebody who has $200 billion, he has to spend a little short $11 million a day for the next 50 years to burn up that $200 billion. $111 million a day. So if a week of that 11 million can be given to workers, just imagine how much that can mean to people who would definitely cannot even dream of $500,000 or 100,000 or 50,000 in their lifetime, how much that would mean to them.
What a poignant way to put it, Sheikh Khan. Thank you.
May I say, just take this opportunity as an occasion to recruit more members to get active in our organization and the specific question of other issues that we're concerned about now. This is the first thing we've decided to do together, but we hope there are many more. And we hope that some of the clergy who are participating, who are not active, would join us. But again, in other configurations, we're all working on issues. Some of us work with supporting the Coalition of Immokalee Workers in their struggle with Wendy's. But there are lots of actions going on, but this is the first one that this group has decided to speak out on in this moment. But there will be more. Join us.
Thank you, Pastor Livingston. Thank you. And Joe, are there any other questions?
I don't see anything. I see a message from Arya Leibowitz, and perhaps this is Arya's from the Jewish Labor Committee. Arya, would you like to make a statement?
Well, we're thinking or something specific, a campaign of some sort that workers and the unions are working on right now. I don't know about you, but I'm in a hot room and it's even hotter outside. And it's especially hot in the fields where people are picking crops and are working on crops. So I was thinking of the United Farm Workers on one hand and the Farm Labor Organizing Committee on the other. And both of these unions have campaigns, including legislative campaigns, to give them some relief in the fields, in their workplace. And both of the organizations have information about these campaigns to some degree on their websites. And for sure, the key people in their office that work on liaison with a larger community of which we're a part We'll be more than glad, I'm sure, to be in touch and get your support, and through you, the support of people with whom you're in contact. Simple as that. And I wish everybody a blessed day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Bishop Royster has been able to rejoin us, and his sentence got cut off. So Bishop Royster, if you want to pick up where you left off.
What did I say that I left off? That's what I don't remember. So I apologize.
You were preaching the word.
I was wondering, I said, I feel bad. I'm not exactly the genteel faith person in the room. So, I mean, let me just say very clearly, for those that are political officials, business leaders that have utilized the services and the benefits of essential workers during the last 18 months, whose families have been fed by Uber drivers and DoorDash folk, for folk that have gotten health care, for folk that have relied on technicians coming in to provide Wi-Fi and cable and a variety of services. For them to not support the workers that took care of them during this time frame is not only hypocritical, it's immoral. And that without a shadow of a doubt, if they don't want to support those folk, then they should not take advantage of those services. I'll leave it right there before I say something I really don't want to say publicly.
All right, Bishop Royster, it's just spot on. Thank you. I think we're moving towards closing comments. Does anyone want to add anything? Again, we're an eclectic, ad hoc, national, multi-faith group, and everyone has a platform to speak their truth into this circle.
We have one Central Labor Committee president here on the call, and that's Ms. McDaniel from Nashville, and I thought she might want to chime in. I've heard her talk before.
Lovely. Ms. McDaniel? I believe she might have been on the call, but might have rotated out. But thank you, Mark, for pointing that out. Any other closing thoughts from folks?
This is Bishop Stowe again. I would certainly add to those comments and affirm those comments about our essential workers, and add to those groups that were being highlighted, those who work in the meat industry and who are often forced to be close to each other in terrible conditions and who suffered disproportionately from infection with the virus. I'm glad that we've called attention to the farm workers out in the extreme heat right now. And remember that many of our undocumented workers are exploited even more than those who have the privilege and right of living and working in this country. So oftentimes those who are seen as exploitable, the language Pope Francis uses all the time, we can't have throwaway persons and throwaway laborers. That we're all essential to prosperity, and prosperity for all of us in solidarity. It was good to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Stowe, and thank you to all of our speakers today. Thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you to the media for covering this very important story. I want to close with just a very brief reflection about Christian scripture that very clearly states, if you have two coats and you see someone with no coats, you are to give your second coat to them. And the way our economic system is set up today, we have CEOs who have 310 coats and workers with no coats. Essential workers have no coats, and yet they are the ones who saved us by keeping the food chain open. They are the ones who kept us safe and comfortable. It is time that these workers get their coats that they so richly deserve. And so now, dear friends, we send you forth knowing that the truth will always prevail, knowing that our faith powers us forward to speak truth to power, and knowing that since the time of Moses, God has forever linked workers' rights to God's agenda. By leading the Israelites out of slavery, God made a mark and said, I care about working conditions. I stand with the workers. And on that note, may you all be blessed on this day. May you be blessed during the 4th of July weekend, and stay safe. And thank you all so very much for coming. Blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.